action text in advance on the meeting. Avant de commencer,
before we begin, I would like to point out that the subject of today's meeting is the illegal transfer of Ukrainian children to Russia. Some of the discussions and proceedings might be difficult for witnesses, for viewers, for members of Parliament generally, and for members of the subcommittee in particular. If you feel in distress or if you need assistance, please speak to the clerk to obtain information on available support available, rather, through the House of Commons administration.
it's my pleasure to welcome the witnesses who have joined us this morning, all of them appearing by video conference. From Save Ukraine, we would like to save Ukraine here. Aide à l'enfance. OK, on va commencer avec.
We'll begin with Save the Children. From Save Ukraine, rather.
Kuleba, chef de la direction par vidéoconférence, à vous la parole pour 5 minutes.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor to be standing before you today. I'm Mykola Kuleba, and I have spent over 25 years working in children's advocacy. I served as a presidential commissioner for children's rights under 2 presidents of Ukraine, and now I lead the Save Ukraine Rescue Network, a charitable organization that rescues Ukraine's most vulnerable from combat zones and help them restore their lives through a suite of social services. And I'm deeply grateful for the opportunity to speak before you. I'm here to speak about Ukraine's children. My main message is simple. The Russian Federation is committing genocide of the Ukrainian nation by forcibly transferring our children to Russia and annihilating their Ukrainian identity. Both words and actions of Russia officials indicate the intent of separate Ukrainian children permanently from their families, their national and ethnic group, and thereby annihilating their Ukrainian identity. Maria Lvova-Belova bragged about 750,000 Ukrainian children being forcibly transferred. Russian officials openly expressed their intent to have the transferred Ukrainian children educated in the Russian language, adopted into Russian families, and turned into Russian citizens. Save Ukraine has rescued 200 forcibly transferred children. We not only return these children to Ukraine, but we provide both physical and psychological support to help them heal from their traumas. Though each child's story is unique, we have heard several common themes from their experiences that tells us about life for hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian children living in Russian-controlled territories or Russia itself. We don't know how many of these children are unaccompanied, but we know that unaccompanied children are the most vulnerable to total identity erasure. We have heard again and again about the clear and systematic destruction of Ukrainian identity. Children are forced to listen to Russian propaganda and false narratives about Ukraine. Children are not allowed to speak the Ukrainian language and forced to attend Russian language, literature, and history classes. Children are forced to listen to the Russian anthem regularly. teenagers are recruited into Russian youth military movements, and we have evidence that thousands of these kids are now soldiers fighting against Ukraine. We know that just wearing blue or yellow, or even close to blue and yellow, is grounds for punishment. One boy was punished for wearing purple and yellow socks. A girl in a Russian re-education camp was punished for wearing a T-shirt with a Ukrainian flag, just a Ukrainian flag. A camp director cut the T-shirt into pieces while making a propaganda film. How I'd like to hear from the children themselves. You will hear them soon. And I'm a father myself. I have 4 children and know many of you are fathers and mothers and have hopes and dreams for future of your children. I know how to work to foster your children's identity. Ukrainian parents have the same dream for their children. We dream of having a safe, peaceful, prosperous country governed by rule of law where our children can thrive. Russia launched their full-scale invasion, but we haven't lost this dream. We have a war to win. We have to win. And with your support,
10 more minutes, 10 more seconds, please.
We will win. We must win because we have no, for our children, right to be Ukraine without fear of being persecuted and killed. And I'm finishing. I appeal to you today to use your voices to condemn Russian forcible transfer of Ukrainian children as genocide and to pursue accountability for perpetrators of this devastating crime. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. I would like to suspend the meeting for a few seconds in order to make a test for another witness who was late and just arrived. To get the floor for 5 minutes. Please go.
Honorable Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, and members of the subcommittee, members of the Parliament, international community, and colleagues, thank you for inviting Save the Children to speak today on such an important and complex issue as forcible transfer of children from Ukraine to Russia. The best place for children is with their families and their communities. In a humanitarian crisis, there's so much upheaval and uncertainty for children that it can be difficult to know if a child has an existing family. And even if they don't, it could be traumatic to move them out of the country and culture they are familiar with. That is why Save the Children believes efforts must be made to reunite unaccompanied children with their family members. All means should be used to trace and unite unaccompanied children with their family, local community, accounting for their best interest. We don't know the exact number of children affected by the forced transfers from Ukraine to Russia since February 2022. A range of numbers have been provided by the officials in Russia and Ukraine, who reference from 2,000 children to 20,000 confirmed cases respectively. We know that some of these children are in Russia, some of them are in non-government controlled areas of Ukraine. Some of the children have come from institutions and some not, which complicates the understanding of the guardianship of these children and reunification mechanisms. This is a complex situation that requires complex solutions and clear prioritization of the needs of the children in line with the principle of their best interest. Although we cannot say for certain the scale of the issue and how many children have been affected, we do know that the situation becomes increasingly complex as time passes for every single child. Canada can play a big role in finding a solution. The cases of many of these children may be complicated, but that does not absolve anyone of the responsibility. It is crucial to support accountability efforts and ensure that all accountability mechanisms include child expertise. As accountability processes continue, diplomatic efforts must be directed towards finding solutions and protection for these children in the meantime. To date, the most effective way to reunite children with their families in Ukraine have been grassroots efforts of civil society organizations. They help families trace their children and help the parents and legal guardians to take a long and dangerous journey to Russia or to non-government controlled territories of Ukraine to bring back children themselves. We know how long and difficult and sometimes unsuccessful this process is, since Save the Children supports such initiatives through our partners on the ground. Given the absence of political dialogue between Ukraine and Russia, the mechanism of transferring children cannot be regulated, and legal measures for the return of children deported will remain ad hoc and limited in effectiveness and scale. Technical dialogue between ombuds institutions and relevant ministries in Ukraine and Russia needs to be established as a matter of urgency to fulfill children's rights and facilitate reunification with their legal guardians. Yet we understand that waiting for Ukraine and Russia to establish direct dialogue on this issue may take long, and this is the time that children don't have. Canada can play a role in finding a third country to facilitate the reunification process. We need to help to find states who would be able to promote further dialogue on this issue. We have seen successful cases of negotiating prisoner of war exchanges by third parties, as well as the recent return of several children from Russia to Ukraine, facilitated by Qatar. I would like to again stress the importance of accounting for the best interest of the child during the processes of return and reunification. Serving the best interest of the child is only possible when we examine every single case. And in order to do that, a centralized tracking and information management system is needed to ensure the whereabouts, guardianship status, and well-being of each child. International donors can prioritize funding child protection and tracing to support the restoration of family ties. In closing, I would like to again thank you for the opportunity to address you today and welcome any future opportunities to speak on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And now I would like to invite Ksenia Kolden, Denise Berezny, Anastasia Motishak, and Vladislav Rudonko. You have altogether 15 minutes to share. Vous avez 15 minutes à partager.
You have 15 minutes to share.
Всех вітаю. Мені
Greetings, I'm Ksenia. I'm 18 years old. I have a younger brother, Sergei. He is 12 years old. We are children without parents. 2 years ago, we were in a foster family, and that's when the aggression began. We were one of the first cities, Vovchansk, where Russian troops arrived. So we lived in the conditions of military actions. We had to cover, we had to hide. There were constant shellings on the streets. There were Russian patrols, Russian military machinery. Our lives changed. In the summer of 2022, our teacher recommended persuasively and intensely that we have to go to study in Russia. Most parents agreed to that, to those proposals, because they didn't want to have conflicts with the occupational authorities. So that's how we arrived in Russia. At the same time, my brother was taken to a camp in Krasnodar region with a pretext for a health camp, and it was to be for a brief period, but actually it was a very long period. So after 2 months, I was expelled from a housing facility from the college where I was studying from my pro-Ukrainian position. I didn't want to take Russian passport. I didn't take up a proposal of free housing. And after all these happenings, I met someone and I stayed with that person. My brother at this time stayed in Russia, and he was eventually placed with the foster family. And all that time I knew where he was. And at the end of winter, I was in a tough psychological place, mental place, and I knew that I wanted to go back to Ukraine, but I didn't know how to achieve that. And I started to look at the possibilities how to get back to Ukraine. And I promised myself that I will go back only together with my brother. With the person who I knew from my hometown, I contacted social services of my city, and I found out about Save Ukraine organization, and they started to help me to plan the process of getting back to my homeland. I understood that they were the people who they will help me to come back.
When I had all the papers and I was able to come, and my brother had the papers, Russians started to pressure him and saying that he will not go back to Ukraine. There is a war, Ukrainians are Nazis, and he will be better off in Russia. I was told that my brother does not want to go back, which really surprised me. I was really worried that I would not be able to take him with me, but I just got myself collected, and I did go to where he was. Once I was there, I understood that he really does not want to go back. We spent 3 hours talking to each other. I was trying to explain to him that if he does not go now, then we will not see each other and we will not be able to be together as a family. And then he was asked whether or not he wants to go with me, and he said yes. After a few days, at the borders of Russia and Belarus, we were not allowed to say that we are going back to Ukraine because we would not be allowed to return. We had a few days of an exhausting trip. We were worried that we would not come back, that we would have to stay in Russia, but we still managed to come back to Ukraine. Then we were in a center from Save Ukraine where we were provided with medical and psychological assistance. Right now, my brother is in foster care with a great Ukrainian family. He has his own room, which he's really happy about. And I work in Save Ukraine in the organization and try to work on saving the children who were forcibly transferred to Ukraine, to Russia, and had to live under occupational Russian authorities. I know Ukraine will triumph in the war and Russia will be punished for all of its crimes, and I hope that no more children will have to forcibly become Russian. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Denis. I'm 18 years old now. During the occupation of my city of Kherson, I was taken to Crimea against my will. Military officers came to my apartment and they said, "We don't care whether you want to go or not, but you still will go." My parents were shocked. They could not argue with armed officers. Then on a school bus, we were taken to the Kherson River port. And they were saying we're going to a camp for 2 weeks and then that we'll come back. We were taken to Oleshki, where we were waiting for a bus for 3.5 hours. The camp leader was a former Ukrainian Special Forces Astafyev, who fled in 2014. He kept saying that Russia is better than Ukraine. He was saying that if here in the camp you say something bad, you will have to walk back to your home. I am a diabetic. I went to the infirmary and I said, I'm almost out of insulin. And I was told, come back when you are out completely of insulin. After a month, I was really feeling bad because I had no more insulin, and an ambulance took me to an ICU unit to Yevpatoria. It took several hours to transport me there. In the intensive care unit, I spent 2 or 3 days, and then I was taken to Simferopol for 3 weeks so I could get insulin and get medical care. In February 2023, all students had to be sent to study in Crimea. I was sent to study a year earlier as an operator of a machinery. I did not want to study, but I was forced to. So I ended up in the Naval Technological College in Kerch, the city of Kerch. There I studied until the end of the school year. I was constantly told to get a Russian passport. I kept saying I don't want the Russian passport. I did not want to receive one. Then a friend of mine called me and he said there's an opportunity to go back home. There is an organization called Save Ukraine, and it helps children go back home. So I called a hotline from a Russian number. I called Save Ukraine. And I provided them with all the information I had and to be able to go back home. I said that my parents cannot come and pick me up. And together with Save Ukraine, we started to pick up a power of attorney for the mother of a friend of mine. When I knew someone's coming to pick me up, I was so happy. I didn't even know what to do. At the border checkpoints, we were interrogated by the Russian security services. They were checking our phones. When I saw the letters Ukraine, I just picked up my heavy bag and I shouted, "Glory to Ukraine," because I understood I was finally home. Thank you. Hello, my name is Anastasia. I'm 16 years old, and I'm from the city of Kherson. I had to spend 4 months in the temporarily occupied Crimea without my family and without the opportunity to go home. And how did that happen? It happened because during the Russian occupation in Kherson, we were actively offered to go on the so-called holiday to the camps in Crimea. My mom did not want me to let me go, but a teacher in the college where I was studying insisted. She said, it's nice there, there's no war there, and of course when you're under shelling every day, when you're worried, when you're afraid every minute of every day, and they're saying everything is quiet over there, my mom ended up agreeing. We were told that the conditions in the camp were nice and that it was nice. When we came to the camp, there were cockroaches everywhere in our closets, in the canteen. We had to sleep on dirty, smelly sheets and pillows. And apart from that, it looked like a regular summer camp. But then it changed after a few weeks because we were forced to learn and sing the Russian national anthem each week at a certain time. And if we refused, we were admonished for it. And they were saying we are ungrateful. We were forbidden to speak Ukrainian and show our identity. If we showed that we were from Ukraine, they harassed us. At each event, children from the temporarily occupied Crimea had to shout "Glory to Russia," while Ukrainians were told that they had Nazis in their homeland, and it was the Ukrainian armed forces that were shelling peaceful cities. It was really intolerable. And when my mother asked Save Ukraine volunteers for help and said that she will come and pick me up, I was extremely happy. I was very hopeful that I will see my mom. It took her 15 days to get to me. She had to go through Poland, Belarus, and Moscow. And we went back the same way. Right now, I live in the Hope and Restoration Care Center. and go to school, and I dream of the day the war ends. Thank you. Hello, my name is Vladislav, and I'm 17 years old. Today there is my mom here, Tatiana, and she went through all the horrors with me, and she could tell you a lot. I was taken on the 7th of October to Yevpatoria, to the camp called Friendship, Druzhba, and they were imposing a pro-Russian position on me, and I was annoyed with it. At some point, I took off the Russian flag from the flagpole, and I was put in a punishment cell for a week. I spent a week with no communication, with no phone. Nobody was allowed to go in and speak with me. I had suicidal thoughts in there. After that, I was taken to Kherson region, to the Lazurne village, and I spent 6 months there. We were playing soccer with the other boys, and a Chechen officer came up and he said, "Where are the girls?" And I said where they were. He came back, he spoke with the girls, talked to them, and then he came up to me because at one point I said, "Our girls are not suitable for you." And then when he tried to approach for me, did sports, so I tried to resolve everything peacefully. And he just started moving towards me, and I understood that he has more advantages than me. He's stronger, and he could even kill me. And he could just say that it was due to my pro-Ukrainian position. And after that, I fled home. 2 days, in 2 days, my friend was supposed to go home. His mom was coming to pick him up, and he asked me to give him a tattoo. And when his mom came, everybody in the camp took us into a room and videotaped us. So they made us take off all of our clothing except for the underwear, and made us videotape apologies for this tattoo. Then they found a message in my phone where my sister jokingly called me a separatist, and I was taken away into an unknown location, and I spent 20 minutes there, and he said, "If you ever write anything in Ukrainian or to Ukrainians, he will speak to me in a whole different manner." And I heard screams. After that, he showed a photo of my father. My father is a soldier in the armed forces of Ukraine. And he said, "I cannot write to my father at all." When you're in Russia, on the occupied territory, you have no rights. You can't do what you want. You can't do the right thing. You cannot admit you're Ukrainian. You cannot say you love Ukraine. Right now, I want to do professional sports. Thank you for listening to me.
And now I would like to invite Mr. Yevgen Mezhevoj to take the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Hello, my name is Yevgen Mezhevoy. I was born in Ukraine and grew up in Ukraine in Mariupol. I'm 40 years old. At the beginning of 2016, I went to Chernivtsi because things were not very safe in my hometown. And I joined the armed forces of Ukraine. And until 2019, I was a serviceman in the armed forces of Ukraine. Then after a while, my wife left me alone with 3 children. And after that, I stayed in Yavoriv. After my contract was done, I returned to Mariupol and continued to work at the metal plant. I also branched out into small business, and at the point of February 24th, I was still working at the plant. I ran to my children. I saw the situation at home. We packed up, and we went to take shelter. Until April 7th, we went from one bomb shelter to another. We had to drink water from radiators, from fire hydrants, from anything that we could use to get some water. I did have a small business that was linked to catering, and so I had some food left over. On April 7th, near the number 4 hospital in Mariupol, a Russian military came to our bomb shelter, said that we have to evacuate because Chechen units are coming to clear the area, and that this clearing process would be extremely rough. I decided that, yes, we have to evacuate. We did evacuate to the town Vinogradne. The children were fed there, and they said you have to keep moving further because this displaced persons camp is over capacity. And they told us to move further. Everybody was indignant because many people were wounded, some were elderly, some had heavy bags. And they took us to the checkpoint. Then they started to search our things, documents, everything was checked. No place was left unturned. They saw my papers and understood that I was a former military. I was told to find someone who'll pick up my children, and they told me that I will be here. And I said, how long will I be here? And they said, you could be here for 2 hours, you could be here for 7 years. I found someone to watch for my children. They were placed on a bus, and they left to some place to which I didn't know. Then I was interrogated, and I was taken from various detention places, and I ended up in Olenivka. I was beaten in Olenivka very roughly. In a one-person cell, there were 20 people. The cells were overflowing. Then at the end of May, I was called to the warden, and I was told that I will be freed. And on May 26th, I was freed at 6 p.m. There were no buses. And so I walked to Donetsk on foot, because Donetsk is where my documents were, my passports, and my children's passports. Once I was in Donetsk, the following morning, I walked through the night. I was told that my children, on the 26th of June, they went to Moscow to a special camp run by the Office of the President for rest and recreation. I was very nervous and anxious. I was stressed. I demanded that they give me a number to communicate with my children. I was able to speak with them. And on the 15th of June, my son called me and he said, "Dad, 2 women are here and they're saying the camp stay is almost over. We have to place you somewhere." And we were told 2 options, either foster family or we have to go to an orphanage, to a residential school. What do we do? I said, I have to talk to you before making a decision. I said that maybe it's better to go to a residential school. How many days before you are placed, I asked, and they said 5 days. I had no money, And then through friends, I saw volunteers' website, volunteers who helped to go back to Ukraine. I called the volunteers, I told about my situation, and they started to help me remotely come to my children. They paid for all of my trips, and they helped me resolve the issues that arose. Once I was 3 or 4 hours from Moscow, we wrote an official letter to the office of the President of Russia demanding that my children be returned to me. Yes, there were issues and we were solving them remotely with the team of volunteers.
Extra, so please wrap it up. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering if it's not possible for us to let
И
our
с помощью этих
witnesses
волонтеров
have.
And then we were in Latvia, and now I'm with my children, and everything is okay. Thank you.
Et maintenant, j'aimerais remercier.
I would now like to thank each of our witnesses for their comments. And we will now move to questions by committee members.
Invite Madame Rosalie Falk to take the floor for 7 minutes. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'd like to thank each of our witnesses, not only for being willing to share your story today, but also for your resilience and for your bravery to come forward and expose the realities of the war in Ukraine. So I want to thank you so much for that. I am a mother as well, and it is difficult for me to even imagine the suffering of being forcibly separated from your children. And just from hearing here, you know, I'm incredibly grateful for the work that Save Ukraine and Save the Children is doing to help reunite families. And I also just want to say I'm so sorry. Like, I am so sorry for the hardships and the evil that you each have had to endure throughout this whole process. And again, thank you for sharing your vulnerability and the reality that you've each have experienced in these situations. I would like to focus on the parents, if that's okay for right now. So I would like to ask Tatiana, if possible, how did you find out that your son was taken to Russia?
My son called me and he told me that he was taken from his home and that he's in Oleshki, former Surupinsk. It's on the left bank of the Kherson region, and they're waiting for buses to be taken to Crimea. And there was a scandal because I told him, how can you do it without even my knowledge? Do that. And who took you from the house? How he was able to? How he did end up on the left bank and left for Crimea?
Communicate with him regularly, or was there a lag in communication from that initial time?
While he was on the road, there was still an ability to talk to him, but then there was interruption in communication for about 2 months, and I had no idea what was happening with him. And only after 2 months pause, he contacted me. He told me that he was in Crimea, that he is in detention facility. He didn't tell me the reason why he was in a detention facility. Only later I found out the reason. And from that point on, we were able to communicate, like to write to each other every day, checking with each other how are things, and looking to the possibilities to bring him home.
I can't even put the words to that. I think you really speak to the determination of a mom, and to be able to be reunited is just it's so wonderful. Because I understand you did travel to be reunited. Do you feel comfortable just maybe speaking about some of the fears that you had when traveling?
The scariest thing was when I arrived to pick up my son. It was in the village of Lazurne on the left bank of the city of Kherson. It was the most difficult because I was taken to a basement for interrogation. They were putting me through a lie detector. It was 24 hours that I was detained, and I had no idea what was going to happen to me, whether I will be able to see my son again. I didn't know whether I will be able to return, whether I will be able to see him again. Also, it was scary when they told me that they would take me to my son, but I was afraid to go and sit with them in their car, because they placed a hood on my head so they wouldn't be able to see where they are taking me. And they told me to bend my head so I don't see the street. And they were all carrying weapons, and I knew that they could do anything they wanted. But thank God they took me to my son. And 5 days they wouldn't allow us to leave. For 5 days we stayed in the village of Lazurne, but we were lucky because there was a very nice family that we were able to stay with during that period, and they were helping us. So only after that 5-day period they were allowed us to leave, but only after we made a video where I was supposed to say that Save Ukraine is a very bad, Save Children is a very bad organization. They are stealing children, and that Russia is a wonderful country. And only after I made that video, they let us go. And we didn't tell them that we were going back to Ukraine. We told them that we going to Poland, that our final destination is Poland, that we are not returning to Ukraine.
Much for sharing that. I know my time here is running out, but I just wanted to say to Vladislav, he doesn't have his headpiece on right now, but you are very courageous and you are very loved, and I am so glad to hear of your reunification story with your mother, and you are strong and courageous, and thank you so much for, again, just being vulnerable and sharing with us here in Canada about what is going on and the kidnapping of children that is happening by Russia, the Ukrainian children that they are kidnapping. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. And now I would like to invite Mr. Baker to take the floor for 7 minutes. The floor is yours, Mr.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And may I speak in Ukrainian, or would that be appropriate to speak to the
We have interpreter. Yes?
Yes?
Yeah, go ahead.
If my colleagues would allow. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to say thank you. My name is Ivan Baker. I am a member of parliament. I am grateful for your bravery, courage, that you are today with us, that you shared what you suffered through. And please know that we will work to help you, to help Ukraine. I would like to ask Vladislav, Anastasia, Ksenia, what would you like? What would you asking us as members of parliament? What politicians in Canada, what you would like us to know, and what would you like us to do to help children who are now in Russia or on Russia-occupied Ukrainian territories. What I would like Canadian Parliament to help the organizations Save Ukraine to help in their work to return children back to Ukraine. Because I know some people who ended up in Russia, and I want those who want to return back to Ukraine to be able to do so, so they are to help them to remember. So if you could help this organization, that would be great. I would like to add that we would like that more people find out about those crimes that Russia commits against Ukrainian children, that they forcibly transfer them to Russia, that they try to make them from Ukrainians to become Russians, and so that more people know what's going on. It was a horrible time for me to live through this, to live under the occupation, live in Russia. I can't even compare it with anything. So thank you for listening to my story, and I'm hoping for your help and support. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to add something to this? If I may,
thank you for your questions, but it's very hard for children who've been traumatized, hugely traumatized by Russians, now to witness about these crimes. And you've seen like Vladislav, it's very hard for him and his mother. Yeah, but they are very brave. You have to know they're very brave, and they want to be a voices of that thousands, hundreds of thousands Ukrainian children who live under the Russians. And we really want to escape them, to return them. And these brave children, really, we can see how huge trauma they received, but thank God that can live now in Ukraine, and we can rebuild their life. And I want to share one thing that I always asking them what is highlighted story, what it really was the most emotional thing what happened with them. And all of them were telling me that it just when they crossed the Ukrainian border. Thank you.
Thank you, Mykola. Mykola, so I would like to come back to you if I may. I see Katerina has her hand up. Does she want to speak, Katerina? Please go ahead if you'd like.
Yes, thank you. Distinguished audience, thank you for having me there. So I can add something as for the role of Canada in this process of repatriation and rehabilitation of Ukrainian children and restoring justice. Canada is ahead of the group of children and armed conflicts in the United Nations. That is why you are powerful enough in order to help us towards the United Nations General Assembly resolution on repatriation of Ukrainian children, because we need to push the Russian Federation to comply with its international obligations. And also, we need to recognize this political indoctrination and re-education of Ukrainian children as the seventh serious violation of children's rights committed during armed conflict, because without it, the Russian Federation will continue this policy. And of course, we need to not only repatriate Ukrainian children, but also rehabilitate them. That is why we need to support the initiative by the Trust Fund for Victims in the ICC as for using this as their assistance mandate and implementing this policy for rehabilitation and reintegration even before the verdict of the ICC. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Katerina. And Mykola, if I can come back to you, what more, do you have any other recommendations for us? What are the things that as as members of parliament, as people in government, we can do more to support and to help repatriate children, Ukrainian children who are currently in Russia.
Yeah, thank you, Ivan. I met you several times in Canada, and thank you for your position and for this and for that parliamentarian who are fighting, standing with us and fighting for Ukraine. It is very important for us. And you know, as you know, Maria Lvova-Belova, Putin's commissioner, reported that they've been registered more than 700,000 Ukrainian children in Russia. And we really have no idea how many of them are unaccompanied. We have no idea how many of them are orphans, how many of them lost their parents because they were killed by Russians, how many of them received Russian passports, were placed to Russian families or orphanages. It is our kids. It's Ukrainian children. Many of them cannot sleep and dreaming about escape. And I can tell you just a story of 12-year-old boy who was dreaming. We escaped him. We returned him. But he told me that he was dreaming every night and planning how he crossed, when he escaped, how he crossed a minefields on the front line. Can you remember a child, 12 years old, who are dreaming, who are planning to cross the minefields? Yeah, and that's why, first of all, we understand that Russia aggressor in this battle to win, but we will win. But first of all, we need your pressure on Russia to give us information about all Ukrainian children who've been deported, all Ukrainian children who now live in Russia. We want to know what happened with them. We cannot live normally, have no idea what happened with them. How many of them want to come back to Ukraine? We understand that after brainwashing them, many of them receive Russian passports, and maybe they want to stay there with their relatives. But we have thousands of orphans who've been deported. We have thousands of Ukrainian children who are dreaming to come back, but we don't know. We have no information. That's why we Save Ukraine, we searching any information. We build underground railroad just to return children. We return 200 children, but it's a little bit. It's a drop. It's a sand. But we need more. We need more, and you can help us to do this. But it is another.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mykola. I think my time is up. Дякую вам всім. Thank you.
Thank you.